Hey there everyone, welcome back to the Free Think Dojo, and for today's video I wanted to get a little personal. I wanted to talk about something that I struggle with on the daily and I've kind of touched on in my previous videos, which is anxiety. For as long as I can remember, I've always been an anxious person. From when I was a kid growing up to now as being 28, anxiety has been something that has stuck with me and been probably one of my biggest obstacles in life so far. So today I thought I would take a deep dive into kind of my mind and experience with anxiety and just see if anybody else relates. Obviously, I've tried to find ways to cope and to deal with that obstacle. And I do have some tips and tricks to kind of make my way through and navigate through day to day anxiety. So hopefully these tips will kind of help you guys out as well. Once again, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, like the video, and let's get started. A little disclaimer to get started, as I do with any of my other mental health related videos on this channel. I am no expert in mental health, so I'm not going to have any tips and tricks that are going to be the end all solutions for you. Once again, if you are struggling deeply with mental health issues, please consult with an actual professional to find out what works best for you. I've also never been officially diagnosed with anxiety or any disorder. I probably should go and get it checked out, but people in my family have been diagnosed and have had issues with it to where they take medication. My mother, my brother, it's just been something that's kind of ran in the family, so I've just assumed that I kind of got the same thing. For anybody that's actually had anxiety in their life, whether it was a disorder or just general anxiety, you know that it can be a pretty fickle bitch, for lack of a better term. I feel like with anxiety, everybody experiences it different. I feel like a lot of people have anxiety about a situation that maybe a lot of other people do, but the way that they experience it is, going to be unique to them. When I was growing up, I was always a shy kid, but I was also fearful of a lot of things. I was scared of scary movies. I was scared of ghosts. I was scared of aliens. Anything that you could think of, I probably had some fear of. Now, obviously, as I was developing through life, I started to try to learn how to, deal with that. And as you get older, you become less scared of, monsters and ghosts and things of that nature. But as I was developing, I started to see a shift when I was getting through school and trying to figure out, how to go about things. I started to run into very heavy test anxiety. I did mention this in my previous school video that test anxiety was something that I struggled with a lot. And, even to this day, it still gives me anxiety thinking about it. But I remember growing up and, going into, I guess, like middle school, junior high, anytime that I had to study for a test, it was always such a struggle for me. Obviously, I learned by doing. That's kind of how I've always learned. But at the same time, it was just the idea of sitting down and studying for a test that would determine if you passed or not, would be able to move up to the next grade or just be successful in school. I kind of hung on to that idea a little too hard. I remember having kind of like anxiety attacks studying for a test because I would see the information, I would read it, and I would do a normal study session. But then when I would get ready to like step into the classroom to take the test, I would feel this heaviness, in my chest. And I would feel this heaviness in my body of like, I'm scared pretty much. I'm fearful of what's about to happen. Once I started taking the test, that's where it got really crazy because I would start to second guess myself on every single question because a little bit was like a self confidence issue, but the other part was, if it was self confidence, let's say, the self confidence aspect would be heightened by the anxiety, if that makes sense. If a question was, what's one plus one, I would say it's two in my head. And then I would start to second guess myself. I'd be like, oh, well, it could be two or it could be four. I remember seeing, something at one point in my life, whether it was a joke or whatever. But my mind would automatically start thinking, like, oh my God, what are we doing? Stop second guessing yourself. And I would almost have like another voice in my head, which I know sounds crazy, that was kind of like getting really amped up. So all of that, situation kind of evolved as I got older from test anxiety to job interview anxiety. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to work a lot on my self-esteem and it's gotten a lot better than when I was a kid. But at this point, I still see that the anxiety hangs around, but it takes a different form. While it might not be test anxiety anymore, it's pretty much evolved into like going to the store and having anxiety about that, having anxiety about my job and losing my job, having anxiety about my relationship. It can literally be anything. And that's the scary part. Regardless of the situation that brings anxiety, I think the most frustrating part about it all is that when I start to feel anxiety, my brain won't stop going. It just keeps thinking and keeps going with the situation, whether I want it to or not. So that's kind of a little glimpse, obviously. I won't go too deep into it because that's, a conversation I could have for hours. But anxiety is something that has evolved throughout my life, and trying to find ways to cope with it has obviously been difficult because as things change, as it evolves, I have to try out different things to cope with it. Something I have found, pretty helpful as I've gotten older are things like meditation. I obviously am integrated with martial arts, as I mentioned in some of my previous videos, and meditation is something that I've, really found a place within my training and try to find ways to fit it in because meditation, Tai Chi, or anything of that nature has allowed me the opportunity to slow my brain down. If you've ever tried it or if you've never tried it in the past, I would definitely recommend just doing your research on it because slowing the body down with movement or just, sitting in a certain position does allow your brain to also be in sync with your body and it will slow it down naturally as well. But if you're not into that, a big tip that has helped me is just remembering to breathe. Now, you might be asking me, well, we breathe every day. I don't understand. But I'm talking about actually stopping and like taking breaths. I think a lot of people neglect the importance of how your own physical body can affect your mind. And I remember hearing when I used to work in security back in the day that Navy SEALs would have a certain breathing technique where they would breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and then blow out for 5 seconds. This breathing technique was actually scientifically proven to give your body the chance to suppress the adrenaline that some of these Navy SEALs were having in the midst of an actual altercation or actual combat event. And they actually used it strategically to calm their mind and body down. Anxiety does have a lot of different forms for a lot of us. So I would recommend to find some tips and tricks and do research of your own to find what would work best for you. While the breathing and the meditation might work for me personally, you might have to do it in a different way depending on who you are. One thing I will preface is medication and things of that nature. You do have to be careful with. I have seen it firsthand kind of affect people close to me that have dealt with anxiety. And while it might have not been anything super extreme or super hurtful, it does change the way that you process life, and that can be a good or bad thing. Overall, though, the biggest tip of advice I could give is to accept your anxiety. Anxiety will always be a part of my life, whether I like it or not. And at the end of the day, anxiety is something that I truly believe you'll never be able to get rid of. You just learn to live with and you find ways to either make it bearable or, find ways to run around it and still enjoy your life. I think the people that neglect and ignore their anxiety and trying to find ways to suppress it, such as medication or drugs in general, anything like that, I feel like you have to be very careful with it. Now, I'm not the judge; I can't tell you what to do. But at the end of the day, I think there are tips and tricks out there if you do your research that will give you a safe, clean, easy way to just manage it day to day and learn how to enjoy your life with it. So definitely comment down below any tips or tricks that you guys have utilized to help with your anxiety. I'm definitely open-minded and will try anything else just to see if it has a difference. I also would love to hear about your experiences with it as well. I think the biggest thing that we can do for each other when dealing with anxiety is just support. I think we all have different experiences and, some people might have it worse, some might have it not as bad. But at the end of the day, I think if we have relationships to help support each other through it, it makes it a little easier. Once again, appreciate everybody sticking around and supporting the Free Think Dojo today. Once again, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.